What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast today on Friday, October 1st. It's officially spooky season, and the Pirates have one more series left before this season ends against the Cincinnati Reds. And on today's podcast, we have Mr. Adam Bittner joining the show once again. It's been a minute with me and him, but guess what? We're back and better than ever. We're going to evaluate Ke'Bryan Hayes' rookie year, talk about the Roansy Contreras debut from the other day, and how we think baseball is going to shape out over this weekend, because there's a lot that can happen with everything going on. That's all going to be on today's episode of Locked On Pirates, which is also brought to you by Spotify Green Room, the first social audio platform that gives you the chance to talk to fans like me, Adam, and everybody else that we have on this podcast and that listens to this podcast. But let's get right into it.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's going on, everybody? I am your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most. I hope you all are having a phenomenal Friday. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get the man, the myth, the legend, Adam Bittner in here today. Adam, how are we doing today on Friday, October 1st? It's Friday. It's October 1st now. I think it's officially time for department stores to sell Halloween stuff without people getting mad about it. And we have one series left to Pittsburgh Pirates baseball this year. So how are we feeling today?
Feeling pretty good, Ethan. Got a wedding this weekend, so
there you go.
The fall weddings are starting, I think, officially. So looking forward to it and getting another Pirates season under our belts.
Yes, and that's very interesting too, considering last night this is only the 8th time apparently the Pirates have lost 100 games in a season. The first time they've done it since 2010. I kept telling people it wasn't going to happen. It finally happened. I will eat crow on this one. I don't know what you guys want me to tell you. I mean, it doesn't really matter either way. If they would have lost 99 games or 100 games, how much would it really have mattered in the grand scheme of things when this team is winning a World Series in 2024? Not that much. But obviously the talk of the town right now, if people are even paying attention to the Pittsburgh Pirates, like me and yourself and other analysts and stuff, is Roansy Contreras in his debut the other day. 3 innings pitched, phenomenal, just phenomenal. He just looked good to me. I mean, his strikeout ball was there that we've seen in AA and AAA all year. He looked really good with his command. Of course, he had some defensive help as well to not allow any runs. But what were your initial thoughts of the Roansy Contreras debut?
Yeah, I think the stuff looked good. It sounded good because I was in the car for part of it too, and the guys in the booth sounded pretty impressed by what they were seeing. So, I think it's interesting. I've seen some different takes on it that I found amusing. You know, on one side of the scale, you've got the skeptics who are saying, well, they just need the prospects to eat innings now because there's no one left up here. Yeah. But on the other, I think it was good to see him, get a turn. This isn't going to mess with his service time too much. And I think people deserved a little bit of joy here. Yes. Coming down the stretch, just a little something to get excited about, a little morsel. And I think that's what they got in his start. And, I'm curious to see if we see any of these other guys this weekend, if they get any last minute calls, maybe Oneil Cruz or that type of thing, just because he's been tearing it up in AAA as well. And maybe call him up and see if we can get a Josh Bell-like home run, like that grand slam Josh Bell hit when he first came up, and give people something to get excited about going into the off season. It's we've been talking about it all year on this podcast, is maybe some of those guys at AA are closer than you think, because it seems like Ben Cherington is treating Class AA like, kind of the top level, and maybe those guys aren't going to be in AAA all year next year. I don't know. I guess we'll see how the Pirates really view the AA AAA situation. But at least with the Contreras promotion, I think it kind of goes with what we've been talking about, is that's where the prospects are. And once they get to Altoona, once they perform at Altoona, they probably aren't as far away as they felt like in years past, and maybe during the Huntington regime. where he liked to keep them in AAA for a while. So now I'll be fascinated to see how that plays out, starting next year.
Oh, yeah, and Oneil Cruz, you brought him up. I was also going to bring him up today as well. I've just seen Twitter go absolutely nuts over him. He's been, for right reasons. I mean, I believe in Indianapolis, he was the first Indians player since 2008 to homer in his first 4 consecutive games, which is nuts. Because you also look at his home runs and expect him as a power left-handed bat. With any power being that young, you usually expect him to just hit everything to right field, just being like how he is. He's a left-handed hitter. Most of his home runs that I see are opposite field. And I mean, would I be mad if they brought him up this weekend? No. Do I expect it? Also, no. Excuse me again. I don't expect them to do it though. Just because, I mean, cool if you do, cool if you don't. I didn't expect Roansy Contreras either, and it's the final 3 games of the season, so you never know. Maybe they call him up on the last day of the season and let him roll out there and do something.
Yeah, and, I'm not necessarily advocating for it. I think to me the most interesting thing about this Pirates rebuild is really what is the timeline between getting to AA and getting to the big leagues. I think that's intriguing, and that's why I'm curious to see if we do see Cruz this weekend, because he's been at AAA really just for a cup of coffee so far. And cautious optimism. I think at this point, I don't know what the pitching quality is like at that AAA level, playing out the string and all of that, but for now at least, I think it's exciting that he's tearing it up, and who knows, maybe we'll see him for a day or two this weekend.
Oh, yeah, of course. And it also brings into the idea, too, that it kind of will let the Pirates, if they want to experiment, especially if they do it tonight against the Cincinnati Reds. I would love to see them. If they do this would be my hypothetical of what I would want to see from Oneil Cruz. Is most people have pegged him as a shortstop. Is he going to stay there, though? So maybe if they want to bring him up tonight, play him at shortstop in game 1, play him in right field game 2, and then wherever you want to see him in the 3rd game, you play him. That's what I would personally do, because I don't think the bat is going to ever be in question with Oneil Cruz, just how basically on how he looks. I mean, his bat looks absolutely insane. And, I mean, I don't think that part is ever going to be in question, but if we don't ever get a universal DH and he's a question mark in the field, it's going to be very hard to play him. And I mean, I understand there's top players like a Javi Baez and a Fernando Tatis Jr. who also have their defensive struggles at the shortstop position and still get to play and get MVP votes. But for a team like the Pirates, they can't really afford to have that. The Padres have enough around Tatis, even though they didn't make the playoffs, and neither did the Mets with Baez. They have enough around them to say, we can deal with your defense being bad. The Pirates don't have that just yet. Now, maybe in a couple years when you also have Nick Gonzalez, Liover Peguero, and Kanan Smith and Jigba, and like Hudson Head and Travis Swaggerty and all these other guys up here, then maybe you can afford to have Oneil Cruz on that bubble where he can be okay defensively at the shortstop position or in right field and still hit 270 and hit 30 home runs.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the defense with this. I mean, with this stage with the Pirates, it's they stink. I think they're going to continue to stink. I don't think it matters what he does in the field.
Yeah.
He could turn in 40 errors next year, and I don't think it matters for this team. I think you got to figure out what you've got with him, and that's his natural position. So I would start with him at shortstop. I'd roll with it, and unless they got Pedro Alvarez 2015 ugly, I think you just got to play him there and kind of let all the other pieces fall where they may, because we've talked a little bit about on this podcast about some of these prospects aren't going to turn out, and I think the idea that people have talked about there being a log jam at shortstop. That's a problem I think you worry about when you get to it. When you have a good shortstop that Oneil Cruz is blocking and not playing great defense, if that happens, then address that situation at the time. But at this point, I think he's the obvious guy to slide in there when he's ready. And hopefully that's sooner or later for the Pirates. And I just think we know even next year, maybe the Pirates aren't going to lose 100 games. Maybe they're a 90-loss team. Maybe they're an 85-loss team. But they're not competing for anything.
No.
And so I think you want to get this bat in the lineup. You want to get him against Major League pitching. You want him to start to figure that out because it's, we've seen with some other Pirates prospects over the years, some of them, take some time to figure it out. Some of them never figure it out. And I think you kind of got to start the clock on that so you know what you have in this guy, kind of before, maybe extending him or, planning for him to be a cornerstone of this franchise. So that's kind of where I see it. I'm not worried about the defense now. We'll wait until the team is good enough to be worried about that as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah, of course. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, we're also talking about something that hasn't even happened yet with him getting called up. So, I mean, maybe it does happen, and me and Adam just broke the news on Locked On Pirates today. There you go. You could say Ethan and Adam broke the news today. But today's episode is, of course, brought to you by the wonderful people at Built Bar. Built Bar, of course, is the best tasting protein bar on the market. You can find it at BuiltBar.com. They have 9 unique different flavors in cherry barca, coconut brownie, German chocolate, cookies and cream, all that good stuff. And if you want to try all of their 9 flavors, you can get a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. Not only are they amazing, but they are also healthy for you as well. They have 130 to 180 calories in each, about 4 to 5 grams of net carbs and sugar. And best of all, they're all healthy for you in pretty much every facet. And they taste good. I mean, they're basically chocolate candy bars that taste good and are good for you. They are also the official sponsor of the U.S. track and field team, which is pretty cool. And if you head to BuiltBar.com and look at that little promo code down there, LOCKED15, you'll get 15% off of your next order when you invest in the best protein bars on the market. Adam, we're talking about a lot of young people today. Of course, we got to see Ke'Bryan Hayes this year in a full rookie season, because I say that considering day one of this season, I think, is around when you actually started coming in contact with me. Ke'Bryan Hayes hit a ball over the Wrigley Field fence, and I absolutely lost my mind. I can send you the audio if you ever want to hear it. It's the greatest thing you'll ever hear. I lost my mind. I couldn't sit down for 3 minutes. Like, I really couldn't. And then the next day, he gets hurt. So, obviously, the Ke'Bryan Hayes saga of 2021 was very interesting because we were without him until basically June. He comes back, keeps tearing it up again, has a slump, can't hit an inside up fastball to save his life. And then now he's kind of in that middle road of where I considered that he's had a very good season, in my opinion, based on what he's dealt with this year. What are your thoughts on the official first full season that we've seen of Ke'Bryan Hayes?
Yeah, I think it's tough to have a full gauge because of the injury, like you mentioned. I think he's not. I never thought he was the 1100 OPS guy that we saw in 2020 for that limited period of time. And maybe he'll grow into that, but my expectations for him as a prospect were never to be a massive slugger. And I think you could probably say the same thing about Andrew McCutchen. I think he surprised a lot of people, when he started hitting the way he did in the big leagues. And, I think there's still a chance for Ke'Bryan Hayes to kind of follow that path. But, I think he probably settles somewhere between what we saw in 2020 and what we saw in 2021 in terms of his stat line. Maybe an 800 OPS hitter, a good hitter, but not a phenomenal one. And then you pair that with the defense, and I think that's a potent combination. Get a little bit of power out of him, but I don't think he's going to be a 40 home run guy or anything like that. I think I guess I'm looking for Andrew McCutchen upside here, and we didn't see that this year for most of the season after that injury, and I think going into the spring next year, having taken his lumps, gone through a long campaign, hopefully learned some things, maybe put on a little more strength. I think you can be hopeful that he's going to really round out into being a very solid, good third baseman who can hit to go with his really solid glove. And that's kind of my view of him. Is I expect him to be better, statistically. But but I think there's also a level of let's caution everyone because I think 2020 and his beginning of 2021 kind of, and this happens with a lot of Pirates prospects, is the hype kind of gets out ahead of them.
Yep.
And it seems like people end up being permanently disappointed when they don't live up to these unreal expectations. And I think he only added to that with his start. And I think people need to have more manageable expectations of him, and maybe he'll exceed them. But I think if you're expecting him to be the player he was in 2020, and that's the standard you're going to hold him to, you're going to be disappointed over the long run. And I don't think that's fair to him. I don't think that's fair to the Pirates development regime. I don't think that they've ever really. I mean, I know the broadcast has. I know the broadcast wanted, to hype him up, and I think that's also part of the issue is, with some of these guys, when the Pirates have no hope, the broadcast talks about them like they're Jesus in cleats.
Yeah.
And then when they don't live up to that, people get upset and they get disappointed, and they feel a little bit burned. And I would just encourage people to just kind of reset your expectations and, expect him to be a good player, but don't heap, MVP caliber play all the time on him as necessary for this Pirates rebuild to be working. I still think he can be a cornerstone of this franchise for years to come and an important player. But maybe pump the brakes on the MVP talk just a little bit.
And I agree 100%. And one thing I'll go ahead and say about Ke'Bryan Hayes and the MVP chance and expectations, you have a guy on your team already, Pirates fans, that has those expectations already and might get votes. He has a real chance of winning NL Comeback Player of the Year based on how he's played this year and how he played in 2020, and his name is Brian Reynolds. That's the guy that if you want to get mad at anybody, if their production ever goes down a lot, that's who you should get mad at because he's already established. He's established himself as a basically a 300 hitter that's going to now give you 25 home runs and 90 RBIs every year. That's what you can expect from Brian Reynolds now. Now, with Ke'Bryan Hayes, though, again, I agree with you 100%. I think most people, even including myself, I'll throw myself in there, saw his 2020 in the shortened window and just saw 346, like all these crazy numbers for if you ever go and look at the first 24 games for any Pirates legend, he outbeats Clemente, Mazeroski, McCutchen, Marte, like any of these people that have played recently. He's killed all of them in the first 24 games, but nobody's a Hall of Famer based on their first 24 games or even their first season. Gary Morgan Jr., who I have here on every Monday, we were evaluating the pitching staff on Monday. He said, go look at Zach Greinke's baseball reference card and tell me that Zach Greinke, people didn't have to be patient with him. His first 4 years were awful. So the fact that we're getting Ke'Bryan Hayes basically as a possible Gold Glove candidate this year. I mean, his defensive run saved is, I think, among the top and third baseman, and he's not batted terribly. He doesn't hit the home run. The only issue I've had with him is he doesn't hit the home run ball as much as I thought he might, but I think that power will also come where you mentioned getting stronger in the offseason, putting some weight on in muscle, stuff like that, because he has the tools to do it. But I also don't fully ever expect him to be just 30 home run guy. I think he'll hit maybe 15 or 20, maybe 25 in a really good year. And I'm not a big person on grades. I'm more on evaluation. I didn't see anything that Ke'Bryan Hayes did this year to kill his stock. I don't think his stock dropped at all because obviously at the beginning of the year, most people were pinning him as a rookie of the year candidate. That didn't happen with the injury, and then they were like, oh, well, he didn't win it, so he's not good. But that's where I sit with it. I don't think he did absolutely a thing to hurt his stock. I think he's the same player I know from the beginning of the year, just that he's learned some more things. He's learned how to hit an inside fastball. He's learned how to take it opposite field, and his defense is still amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say this. I think, if you're out there, you got to be accountable for the results that you do put out there. And if you're healthy enough to play, it's reasonable for people to judge you by your statistics and how you produce. And I think that's part of the learning curve. Is
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got great ability. He's a great defender. but baseball is a 6-month season, and he's going to have to push through periods where he's not 100%. And I think hopefully he's learned some lessons from this season too, and learned some lessons from dealing with this injury. So I think you should give him mostly benefit of the doubt. But I think if we're sitting here a year from now and he's had a similar season in 2022, we got to be careful just to not let the expectations get out of hand.
Yeah. And I mean, at that point too, like if we're having the same conversation in 2022, then there's an issue. Like that's when I'll say everything is good. Like you guys will have an issue.
Hey, Ethan, can I pause you real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, my laptop is about to die. So can we? I don't know. Is this going to go straight to YouTube or can you recut it?
Well, I can edit it and everything, but
okay. Let me grab my cord real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, you're good.
I apologize. I came down here, it had half its charge, and then it's getting old. So sometimes
Yeah, that's how my MacBook is. That's why I just always keep the charger in it. Because like I would be on this with you for this long, and literally it'll die like in like half an hour, and I'm like, really? But where were we at? I'm trying to mentally remember where we were, so I can
keep Brian Hayes and dealing with injuries.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. But yeah, if he keeps dealing with injuries, I mean, it happens. It is what it is. But also, again, if we're having the same conversation in 2022, another thing that I like to mention to people is you don't really know who's behind him in the system. This is one of those weird spots where it's that kind of worst case scenario kind of deal where what ends up happening if Key Brian Hayes all of a sudden, for some reason, like just does this, who's behind him? Alexander Mojica? That's the only guy that comes to mind right now. And we can even get into this some more, but I also want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by betonline.ag. We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back on another football season. By the way, if you guys want to go follow some of Adam's other work, he follows college football all over the place. It's great. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all of the pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. From football, basketball, boxing, baseball right now, especially betting on the playoffs is fun. Right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline is also where the game starts. And hey, Pirates fans, my name is Ethan Smith, and I have an incredible app for everyone who buys gas that needs to know about it. Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code BASEBALL for MLB and get a bonus 25% per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account, and you can cash out anytime using e-gift card, Amazon, PayPal, Cash App, anything else. And again, that is Get Upside and use promo code BASEBALL for 50 cents off of your first gallon of gas to make some cash back. But I'm actually liking this Key Brian Hayes talk a lot. What things do you think he can improve on going into 2022?
I think we've talked a little bit about them. I think you just want to see just a little more power, I think. And it doesn't even have to be a ton of home run power, but I think you'd like to start seeing him attacking those gaps. And I think, his OPS could jump to 750 just from that. He doesn't have to add a ton of home run power just to kind of get into that realm. I think he has good hitting instincts, and I think that's the encouraging thing is that some guys never find that, but I think you can see the good hitter in him. You can see that he's got that potential. So I think, certainly more power, and it doesn't necessarily have to be home run power. And I think those numbers will quickly kind of get to a place where my expectations for them were. I don't know what fans' expectations were, or what Greg Brown was talking about on a
MVP.
given night, but I think an 800, 900 OPS guy, somewhere in that range, somewhere between 8 and 9. I think he doesn't have to do a ton to get there. And I think that's potentially exciting, even though we've talked about the limitations he's had this year.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to leave it because Key Brian Hayes, again, I've already bought his jersey. I'll wear it the next time you're on. I'll show everybody. I already have it because I love the guy that much. His dad also follows me on Twitter, which is also cool. But outside of the Pirates, I mean, they play a series against the Reds this weekend. I say the same thing pretty much about what I'm expecting from that series. Just give me 5 good innings of pitching from the starting pitchers. If it's even starting pitchers at this point, it might just be bullpen arms. And make the games interesting. It's fan appreciation weekend in Pittsburgh. Make the games interesting. Just don't go out there and get shellacked by the Reds 3 times and then end the season like that. That's just all I have to ask for them. But going into the grand scheme of what most baseball fans will be watching, including myself this weekend while I'm not watching football, because a lot of this stuff is like really weird with the football schedule. Like the games kind of fall in the middle. So it's like I can turn baseball on my laptop and then football on the TV so I can watch both. We have a 2-way tie in the AL Central, or in the AL wild card, a team 1 game back and another team only with a 2-game lead. So there's a real shot that we have a 3-way tie, even possibly a 4-way tie for the American League wild card with New York, Boston, Seattle, and Toronto. Who do you think comes out of that? Like, I mean, just realistically, I think the Yankees kind of already pegged themselves. They have to win 2 out of their last 3 games. But who's coming out of it, Adam? Who's coming into the American League playoffs?
I'm not going to make any predictions because when you shorten the whole season down to 3 games like we are now, baseball is such a coin flip, right? And it's really hard to predict. You can think a team's better, but it doesn't matter. There's no time left for the quality of the team. It's all about the matchups and how it's like a shortened playoff series. And we always talk about how the baseball playoffs are already kind of a coin flip, and this is just compressing that down further. Into 3 games and then potentially some 1-game playoff scenarios. So I'm not going to go out on a limb because I think it's it's so dependent on the matchups and everything. But I think in these types of situations, the teams that have power, I think, are the ones that have the chance to just make the biggest difference in the shortest period of time. So I think if you held a gun to my head, I think I'd probably favor the Yankees with all those sluggers, just because I think, in a short series and in a short situation, they can change things in the blink of an eye. Mm-hmm. Then Toronto's got those guys too. So it's hard for me to pick. And I think this is what makes the postseason so exciting, is that it's not a fait accompli. No matter what you did in the regular season, these games are so tight. There's so much drama. There's so much pressure. And that's why, I'll be honest, I haven't been super tuned into broader baseball this year. I've mostly been focused on the Pirates and experiencing baseball through the Pirates. But, I'll be watching every night for the rest of October, because I just think, there's a lot of interesting teams and a lot of fun to be had once we finally kick this thing off. So that's kind of how I'm approaching not just this weekend, but the month to come.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of, since you said mainly that I did kind of the same thing. Most of the games I watch are Pirates games. Obviously, I'm the host of Lockdown Pirates. That's what I have to do. The Milwaukee Brewers and St. Louis Cardinals both, of course, made the playoffs. And what can the Pirates learn from those teams? Like, what is there that can be learned from both of those sides? I mean, St. Louis, they're just a historically consistent franchise. I couldn't tell you the last time the St. Louis Cardinals were, like, really bad. I really couldn't. I don't even know if I'm old enough to remember. I probably am. It just probably is tripping my mind at the moment. And then the Milwaukee Brewers have just been a machine this year. What can the Pirates learn from them to eventually get to the playoffs with what they're doing right now?
I think with the Cardinals, it's what's always been true about them is that they're a bigger market than Pittsburgh, and they've traditionally had more money to play with because they make. I think they have more they have more of their market captured, but they're also not the Yankees and the Red Sox and those teams that are at the top of the payroll every year. They succeed with their development, and how many guys have we never heard of come up, join this Cardinals team and kill the Pirates. And I think if you're the Pirates, that's the place that you want to get to for long-term success, is you want to consistently have that system churning, where it's not, 4 or 5 guys that you're excited about or 1 or 2 prospects every summer that you're highly anticipating coming up and needing to make a big difference like the Pirates did in that 2013 to I'll call it 2018 window when they had a chance to be competitive. They needed all those guys to pan out. They didn't. And there was no kind of second wave behind them. And I think what we've seen with the Cardinals is that they're very good at just producing good baseball players, guys who you can, who may not be the biggest stars, but are reliable hitters, are reliable starters. That kind of, they're not quite all stars, but they have useful guys all over the field. And I think if you're the Pirates, that's the goal. And that's what keeps you from having to go through these rebuilding phases, where you absolutely tear everything down, and gives you a chance to be more like the Penguins and the Steelers, where, we'll see with the Steelers, but at least over the 20 years that Ben Roethlisberger has been in town, they've always had a chance, and all their down periods may have been a year or two as they kind of retooled rather than rebuild. I think that's what you want if you're a Pirates fan. You want to get to that retool stage where, okay, maybe you missed the playoffs for a couple of years, but you're a competitive team, and it only takes a few tweaks for you to get back in the mix. And every year you feel like you have a chance to, if not compete for the World Series and be one of the best teams in baseball, then be right there. And that's kind of the lesson that I would learn from the Cardinals. In terms of the Brewers, I think they've made some investments. You would hope that if the Pirates can get to where the Brewers were and have an upstart season or two, that they start locking some of these players down and start getting around that $100 million payroll mark. Nothing earth shattering, but keeping the guys you have. We talked about Ke'Bryan Hayes. I think for me, it's going to be an interesting offseason because you're going to have Reynolds, you're going to have Hayes. I've even seen some extension talk about Oneil Cruz. I think that's a little premature, but the reality is they have almost no long-term commitments at this point with Gregory Polanco off the roster. There is no. I don't think anyone who's active on the roster. I think Felipe Vasquez and that situation. I believe he's still technically under contract, but we're not going to see him again. But other than that, there are no commitments on the books, and I think it's time to start seeing some commitments. And I think that's an off-season story that I'm curious about.
Oh yeah, of course. And I think that's a perfect way to end today's episode. Adam, where can we find what you're doing this weekend, and all that good stuff with everything going on in sports? Because we have almost every sport playing now. So where can we find what you're up to this weekend?
Yeah, you can check out all my work on post-gazette.com. I'll be working Steelers on Sunday afternoon. Our great Steelers team, everyone from our columnists, Joe Starkey, Paul Zeiss, Ron Cook, Gene Collier, and our 3 beat reporters, Brian Bacco, Ray Fittipaldo, and Jerry Dulac. They'll be all over Steelers Packers from Green Bay. I'll be helping back from home base. And of course, Jason Mackey, Mike Persak will be, wrapping up Pirate season this weekend, but they're Jason Mackey, he's not quitting this weekend. He's going to keep going. So he's, we're going to be recapping the season and kind of moving into that postseason coverage and, start pivot. It's not, we'll blink an eye and the winter meetings will be here. So, stay tuned to post-gazette.com and, consider subscribing. We'd love to have you on board. It certainly helps us do what we do every day. So, we'd love to see you join us.
Oh yeah, of course. And you guys already know, It's on the screen twice today. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. You can follow Adam at FujiMaster24, not like with a J, it's with a G. I hope everybody know. I know you guys can read, but like I'm just always let the people know, especially if
For
you're
the
not
people who
watching
are
on
just
YouTube.
listening.
Yeah, for the people that are just listening on the Apple Podcasts and Odyssey and Spotify side. But guys, one series left. When me and Gary see you on Monday, that's it. There's going to be no more games for the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. So we're going to see what happens. Who knows? Maybe the Pirates sweep the Reds and get their first sweep, or they end the season without getting a sweep, which is probably more likely. Until then, though, guys, I appreciate you all for listening, as always, here at the Locked On Pirates podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And until then, I will see you on the flip side.